All right, everybody, we are live for another episode of Remodelers on the Rise. I have a right in the middle of New York State remodeler. His name's Steve Nash. He's with Upscale Remodeling. Steve, thanks for signing on this fine day.
Yeah, very happy to do it.
Now, you probably were saying, Kyle, you literally just asked me where I was located, and I said New York State. And I just repeated what you told me, but you said Cornell
University.
is located there. So did you attend Cornell, Steve? That nice, beautiful Ivy League school?
No, I was born and raised here. My family settled in this area back in the late 1600s,
Wow.
1700s, and then way before Cornell was here. So my family goes way back.
Interesting. You can you got the trace. You got the ancestry.com. Boom, 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 boom.
1647 is when my ninth great grandfather came over here from France.
Yep. Isn't that cool?
From the Gilded Otter.
Wait, that was the boat?
That was the boat. It had 46 people on board, or 57 or something.
The old Gilded Otter.
Yeah.
Got the job done. France to New York. And here we are today. Things are a little different these days. We got this program called StreamYard. People can comment live. They're watching this. Technology has advanced since the days of the Gilded Otter. And what we're going to talk about today, it's right at the bottom of the screen. It says job costing, ! Job costing, job costing. That's what we're going to kind of focus in on. I had made a post several weeks back on Remodelers Community. Remodelers Community is a private Facebook group. What does it cost to be a part of Remodelers Community, Steve?
Zero. I'm not
Zero.
paying anything.
You don't pay anything. Neither do the other 1,200 people. It is just a wonderful community. If you go to remodelerscommunity.com, you can request to join. And I posted something related to job costing. I was trying to just encourage people to look closely at their expected gross profit versus their actual gross profit. And Steve, you commented to the gist of, I used to not take this job costing very seriously. I changed that. I take it very seriously now, and it has made a big difference. And I said, Steve, let's unpack that. Let's show the people how you're doing that. But let's start by maybe share with the people kind of what type of remodeling business you run, maybe a little bit of the sales volume and the type of work you do. And then tell me the before when it comes to job costing, how you were approaching it before you started to get your stuff together.
Yeah, so we are a design build remodeling company. I have a kitchen and bath showroom because we do a lot of kitchens and baths. And we do whole house remodeling, additions, basements. But anything, design build is typically what we do. We employ we use the lead carpenter system for the most part. I have a full-time kitchen and bath designer on staff out in the showroom, which is nice. So that's it. That's kind of what we do business-wise.
Perfect.
And then it's typical with everybody else. We have our subs, our painters, our electricians, and tile setters, and so on and so forth. In terms of volume, the last few years we've been down a bit. During the pandemic, we tried to, we were growing before the pandemic, and then during 2020, I decided, we furloughed everybody and decided we're going to have to wait and see how this all pans out. So I intentionally kept things low for 2020, and then 2021 was here before we knew it. And as it turns out, looking back, we could have used those years. I mean, we had a tremendous amount of business during 2020 and 2021 to the point now where we're probably booked throughout this entire year and into next year. We have $5.6 million in our pipeline right now, most of which is under design contract.
Excellent.
We're only able to produce. We were doing about 1.7 million before the pandemic, planning on growing into 2.5. And then we could put the brakes on. And so now we're back to, we have to do probably 3.5 this year. And right now we're just trying to put a plan in place to make sure we grow.
Got it.
Safely
Got
to
it.
that point.
Excellent. Thanks for the insight. And I'll just use that opportunity to say, Steve, who gives a rip about top line revenue? It's about gross profit. It's about net profit. Just to pull us back into job costing, because that is true, right? I mean, top line revenue, of course, it's important. These are the dollars coming into our business. But so often, we love to focus on the top line. We love to just kind of put second fiddle when it comes to really paying attention to our cost of goods sold, really paying attention to gross profit. So talk about when it comes to job costing, the younger, less wise Steve. You remember that guy?
Yep.
Okay. A few less gray hairs, perhaps. Still a good-looking chap. What were you doing or not doing when it comes to job costing back then?
Well, honestly, I didn't even understand what the concept was. And one of my business coaches, who was in business remodeling, said you really need to get a handle on job costing, before I even knew what the heck it meant. And so definitely didn't see the need for it because I was just out there working. But long story short, eventually I realized that job costing was important. I can't remember what the catalyst was, but that was probably 25 years ago.
Well, you know what the catalyst was is probably I'm working my face off. Where's all the money?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I'll say about job costing is you don't know until you know there's a problem, you're not even going to try to fix it. And so job costing is simply the simplest way to describe it is obviously you have your estimated costs, and job costing is just a matter of going back and seeing if once a job's done, if your final costs matched your estimating cost, and that if there's a difference, then you have if there's a negative difference, if you're over budget, you have a problem you got to fix. But knowing you have that problem is good.
And it's half the battle.
That's right.
When we see it, now all of a sudden we can look at our estimating and say, would I do that differently next time? Did I miss something? We can look at our team in the field. We can look at how we're managing our production. Sometimes it's a production manager fault. Sometimes we're not preparing for the job enough. Sometimes it goes all the way back upstream to design and project development where we didn't do all of the work up front and left a bunch of question marks. Sometimes it's just flat out you're estimating based on the speed that you can do it and not taking into account your team. There's all kinds of varieties, but what you said, and I want to just hammer that home, until you have the information and the clarity that expected versus actual gives you, it's hard to pinpoint that and it's hard to fix it. But on the flip side, when you do have that in front of you, it's so much easier to make improvements so that the one thing that I think about a lot is if you don't do job costing and you're always underbidding, putting not enough hours in for, let's say, the demo, but you never pay close enough attention for it and you don't fix it, you're going to continue to make that mistake over and over and over and over again. But if you can see it and you fix it, not only do you make your next project more profitable, but also year after year, project after project, it has a value of tens of thousands of dollars by fixing one thing that you're messing up in your estimating. And estimating's hard, right, Steve?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say that it's a constant battle. I mean, we've been job costing for 30 years, 25 years anyway, and we still are off this year, especially with all the changes that have occurred in the materials and the subcontractors and inefficiencies and the guy. So everything's working against you to try to make a profit in this business.
Yeah, but that means
it's important to see it.
That means we need to dig in. So Jim's asking, Jim, you're falling right into our next move. So where do we crunch those job costs? Accounting software, homemade Excel spreadsheets? Well, we're about to click here, and Steve's going to be showing us all of his cost codes and how he's got that set up. He uses co-construct, and he's going to show us how he goes about it on the estimate and showing the estimate versus actual. So that's kind of where we're going next. But before we go there, it sounds like as you've developed things over the years, and fine-tuning the system is a never-ending chase, right?
Yep.
It sounds like you were using QuickBooks for a while. Maybe share how you were approaching it in QuickBooks, and then we'll dive pretty deep into how you're currently doing it, which I hope will help the people. And as you're watching this, folks, if you want to leave a comment, click a little like button. We'd love that. So how are you doing it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So the simplest form is labor material subs. I mean, that's pretty much how all these jobs break down for companies that have in-house labor. So labor material subs, equipment, and other two other categories. So in the simplest form, you could just look at job costing and categorize out your costs into those groups. But as you get more involved in it, you're going to want to see, well, we're off in labor, but where in labor? We're off in materials, but where in materials, and so on and so forth. So years ago, we came up with the cost codes, which is not unique to us. I mean, can you flip over to that?
Once you should be able to go ahead and click onto. So it's showing now for the people. We're seeing the co-construct. There we go.
Yeah.
Maybe make that a little bit bigger if you can under.
Yeah, sure.
There we go. Beautiful.
That help? Whoops.
Yep.
You kind of see those?
Yep.
So essentially, we came up with a set of cost categories, and honestly, these started from Home Tech. I bought a book years ago from Walt Steppenworth of Home Tech, and we.
Did you say you bought a couple years ago? Did you say you bought it a couple years ago?
I bought a copy, a couple of years ago. It's 25.
Now, when you say couple, how many do you mean?
A couple of years.
Yeah, I didn't know if you meant years and years and years ago.
Yeah, 25 years ago.
Yeah, 25 years ago.
I bought his book.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, and that kind of showed me, oh, that's a cool way to break down all the costs, you know. And so I never looked back. So this has kind of grown. This is essentially using those cost codes, and Remodel Max has another list of, they're very similar. And then there's the CSI cost code. So cost codes in this industry, nothing new. It's just a way for you to break down.
Yeah, settle into one of them though, if you could. Go to framing and rough carpentry.
I'll go to framing.
106, sure, and just kind of show a little bit of that. So the theory behind this is, number one, if you want to do good if you want to do good job costing, we need to make sure we have our cost codes between our estimating and between whatever software we're using, whether it's Co-Construct or Builder-Trend or whether it's QuickBooks. We need to match those up, and we need to decide how detailed we're going to be with it. So you've got a pretty decent amount of detail here. Have you evaluated that over the years? Have you kind of refined it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yep. So the bold, the 106 framing and rough carpentry is the parent category.
Yep.
The cost codes below it are everything that kind of fall underneath it. So just so everybody is clear, we do not break down our costs. We don't track our costs in this level of detail. Everything that falls under framing is going to get coded by the guys or coded by our team when we get the material costs or our subcontract costs in. They're just going to be coded 106.
Got it.
Okay, so we don't break it down in this detail. My estimates go into this level of detail, but it all falls under this cost code.
That's good. That's good for people to know. So when are you guys tracking their time in Co-Construct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So when they go in there, they're selecting the hunt job. They're selecting 106 framing.
That's right. So they have to track their time, generally 15-minute increments. So if they're going to be on something for 4 hours, 4 hours and 15 minutes, we'd like to see round it up to the nearest 15. So
okay, good.
So does that make sense?
Yes, and Steve was kind enough, people. If you reach out to Bailey at remodellersontherise.com, or you feel free to comment here. If you'd like a copy of how he set up his cost codes here, send us a note, and he's going to send this spreadsheet over and is willing to share it. Such a nice guy, Steve.
Hey, that's how I got to where I am. Everybody shared with me.
I love that. All right, so there's your cost codes, and we get that organized. What do you see as kind of the next step and key to solid job costing?
Yeah, so again, there's essentially there's about 25. So 101 is our general conditions, 102 tear out, and then if you go down through, get down to the bottom, I went too far. So 125 is cleanup and whatnot. So
got it.
Essentially, everybody kind of codes within these 25 different cost codes. So it's not 180 or 300 cost codes. It's just these 25 to keep it simple.
Got it.
And so these cost codes we have these right in Co-Construct and originally we had them in QuickBooks, and they still are in QuickBooks. And so these are set up as service items in QuickBooks. With each one of these, you have to have these set up. Like we're looking at the screen here, I got 123 floor coverings. Yeah. We'd have 123 floor coverings labor, 123 floor coverings subs, 123 floor coverings materials. So otherwise, you can't really separate them out into labor materials within QuickBooks. I think it's the same way within Co-Construct. So just so everybody's clear, we have 25 cost codes, but then we have each one is broken down into labor, material, subs, equipment.
Got Got it. And that's and right there we may have lost somebody, right? Watching this going, time out. Okay. So I've got cost codes right now. I've got a chart of accounts in QuickBooks. He's telling me I need to have these different categories. Yes. It can be tricky. It can be complicated. You need to lean in. You need to get some resources to help you with it if necessary. But what he just said is, look, if you don't do it, if you don't break it out like that, it's going to continue to be murky. It's going to continue to be clunky. So I just would encourage people, if they kind of get stuck, or they've gone down this road before and they get kind of stuck, or they're half finished with their cost codes, the way that you're going to get this is concerted, focused effort and driving this stuff across the finish line. Then you get to the point where Steve is, where he's got this dialed in and he's got the insight he needs on the job costing. So I just wanted, that's a little bit of a motivating, encouraging to people to really push through and work to get this in place. It's work. It's hard work. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
It is.
All right. So once we have this, why don't we parlay over into the co-construct side? If you want to click into that, you were going to show kind of an estimate that shows how you're kind of using these cost codes, and then we were going to look next at kind of the expected versus actual.
Yeah. So real quick, this is a template.
If you could zoom in a little bit on this too, that'd be wonderful.
On this one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Yep.
So this is our template, our master template within co-construct. And so all of those cost codes come over here into co-construct, and every one of those items I just showed you is an item within co-construct from which we build our estimates. Okay. So I'm not going to go into details about how I set this template up. But if we zoom out and I go into a real live estimate, let me pull up, let me see here. So I'll just pull
up your favorite.
Pull up a bathroom project. Yeah. I have a lot of them.
Okay.
So, so I'm just going to go into a bathroom estimate.
Okay.
And is this zoomed in enough?
Maybe a little bit more would be great.
Okay. Yeah. So as you see, these are the cost codes. These are the parent cost codes that we just showed you in the Excel spreadsheet. So these all come across. This is an actual estimate that we have, within co-construct for a bathroom project. So again, all fall under these categories. So there's either labor, like here's one, labor to obtain a building permit. So for example, in this particular job, we didn't need to pull a building permit, so I have none in there. Okay. But if we back up here to design, this is my original estimate. I had 10 hours figured for my designer. Okay.
And then 36, is a burden. So that's the burden labor for their designer.
That's the burden labor rate for my in-house designer. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And so our burden labor rate for our carpenters is 55. Okay. And we burden our labor, I'm not going to get into detail on this too much, but we have indirect costs like our company vans, our insurances, my project manager, all of that comes at a cost for the year. We burden that into our labor costs. So not only is it taxes, not only is it FICA and all that stuff, but we also burden indirect costs onto our labor. And that's subjective. Some people don't like to do it that way. We burden our labor with that.
Yeah, some people have 12 different things they put in their employee labor burden. Some people have 14. Project manager is one that sometimes falls into overhead expense versus that. There's not one perfect right way to do it, but you better know what you're doing. You better know how you're doing it. You better know that whatever number you put in there for your full labor burden cost, that you understand that. Maybe you've updated it in the last 3 to 6 months because what you're paying your team and some of those indirect or direct has gone up. So it's a good time of year to make sure that you've updated your employee labor burden. Excellent. So you've got that dialed in. I like how you're showing how the cost codes tie in with the estimate and match up. Perfect.
The one thing I'll say about this number right here, the burdened labor rate has got to match. This is the key thing. It has to be what's above the line on your P&L. So that is what we're putting in here to mark up 55 an hour. That has to be that comes from our P&L. That's what our P&L tells us is above the line. We mark up, so each person costs us on average, on a high average, 55. So that's another thing. Most of our guys are up to 50. We tend to be on the higher end of that just to make sure we're covered. But the most important thing is
saying
make sure that what you have
your
there,
project manager cost is in cost of goods sold.
That's right.
Correct.
That's right.
Yep. That makes sense.
And if it isn't, then
and
your
what
accountant
you said,
or whoever helps us set this up would be able to answer those questions.
Yep. Good. Perfect. All right. So we create this. We can see exactly how many number of hours under each of the main parent categories. Once you click over into an example of kind of the expected for each of these and the actual, which is really just showing us our job costing on a very detailed level here.
Yeah. So here is a real live bathroom project that we just completed. And so this is where I go on the budget page to kind of look and see what we estimated, including change orders, and what it actually cost us. So then I can see we were over budget by $27 on that line item. Okay.
Which means
and then
she was pretty close to that 10 hours, but took maybe another extra 45 minutes is basically what it came out to.
Yeah. Some of them, I'm delighted when it's this close. You can see some of these other ones as I go through. This is real time. This is, we were over budget by $1,400 on this project. We may have a pending change order. I've got to talk to my project manager about this, and we may be able to recover some of this, but I don't know yet. I haven't gone that deep.
Yeah. So pause there before you go back up. So down at the bottom there, we were projecting $11,543 of gross profit. Where it says profit there, that is gross profit. Total sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. So we were expecting $11,543. Our actual is $10,076, meaning we've got slippage. It's costing us more to complete this project than what we were expecting. Slippage about $1,400. Okay.
About $1,400. And again, we don't always run change orders as they happen with our customers. If we had to do more plumbing, for example, we'll tell them, we'll alert them, and we'll bill them when we're done. We don't let that go too far, but that's how we do some of these change orders.
Don't let it go too far,
I might be able
folks.
to recover them. No, we don't.
Okay.
So the other thing I'll just mention about this profit, this is about a 35% margin. And remember, we were just talking about we roll up a lot of our burden or a lot of our costs, which otherwise would be overhead. We redirect that. So if I were to not do that, this works out to be about a 42% gross profit margin. But because I'm putting more costs in above the line, our markup is less. So just so everybody's looking at this saying, boy, 35 seems low. Well, depends on where you're putting everything on your P&L. So just to be clear.
Yes. Okay. And if that, and Steve, you're explaining that very, very clearly, but still that can be fuzzy for people. What exactly does that mean? Keep asking questions. Keep looking into this, folks. The people that are kind of like, still is murky for me. Wait a minute. Couldn't we talk about markup versus margin? How does that work? Keep digging in. You hear me talking about all the time, and you're hearing Steve, who is a remodeler who's got this dialed in, and there's so much value in him having that knowledge. And Steve, you haven't always had that knowledge. You've developed that. You've dug in. You've learned those things over the years.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. All right. Good.
No, I started with a bucket of tools and a tool belt and a truck. There you go. About 31 years ago.
And look at you now.
Yeah. So as we go down, some of these start to look uglier and uglier, like our plumbing, for example. That's where we went over. I will tell you, we did not get a price ahead of time. I guessed at this as an estimator because we're so busy. And this is where we learn those lessons. Okay. I do think we did a little extra work that the customer is willing to pay for, so we'll be able to recover that. But that's what happens when we don't get prices up front with our subs. So that's I'm sorry. We probably have the miscoding going on here because that is under, anyway, regardless. That's
but even right there, the questions that you're asking, you have the opportunity to ask those questions because you have the data in front of you. And what you also just said is the reality of job costing. He said, one, we learned and were reminded because everybody nodded their head going, yep, I've been there where I've just guessed and I get burned by it. But we need to make sure that things go into the correct category. Like what you just said,
Right.
this one seems a little off. Now that I think about it a little bit more, let me look at that a little bit further. And you have the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to do that when you have your job costing dialed in. It's a murky
You may
thing.
also, yeah.
Please go ahead.
You may also find where you got double billed from a vendor,
Mm.
by doing job cost. If you're not doing job costing, you sometimes don't catch that.
Yep.
So if I click on this, it gives me the details. So this is actuals, and I just kind of clicked on this. We've got a subcontractor bill in here, but it's also combined with our materials. So I can drill down and see where those discrepancies are, which is, again, the key to job cost.
And Steve, when you get a bill in, you guys are set up where you first enter it into CoConstruct, and have you gone through the connection where CoConstruct and QuickBooks are talking to each other?
That's right.
Way to go.
We do it the other way. They're entered in CoConstruct and then pushed to QuickBooks.
Okay.
They're entered in QuickBooks and pushed to CoConstruct.
Gotcha. How was that task of getting that sync?
I think that was pretty seamless with CoConstruct. That was one of the
Nice.
reasons we chose CoConstruct, because they had that pretty well worked out. So it was good.
Okay. Way to go. Way to go.
So this is, again, you're seeing we have 119. This is tile. Okay. We have 119 labor. You see the L, 119 materials, 119 subs. This is what I was talking about earlier, about we have 3 different categories within each cost code so that we can drill down into the details.
Got it.
So, yeah. So, and again, as I go through, when we know we're still going to have costs, that's why these aren't checked. That's just the thing with CoConstruct. If I were to check this off, it's going to show I'm under budget on that. But we expect more costs to be coming in for this. Yeah. So.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So this is the main thing and how often are you kind of in here regularly? How often are you looking at it, or do you have a project manager that's in here as well, or what?
Both. I'll look at this from time to time, but it's also where our carpenters can look at this. Okay. So boots on the ground, really. So our carpenters, our project manager, and then myself will all be able to see this. Predominantly where the carpenters go, I'll click on this over here with CoConstruct. We track our hours. So if I click on, I'm going to leave this for a second.
Yep.
What's really handy for the carpenters is here's what we estimated hours to be. And here's what they have worked. This is real time. So as they're entering their time in CoConstruct, they can pull up on their app, okay, how many more hours do I have left? Have I exceeded the time? Okay. And you'll see some of these, like, for example, down here in painting, I have 0 hours for painting. That's because we planned on having a sub do it, and something happened to the sub, we had to do it. Okay. So there'll be, the guys can actually go in and look at this as well as us.
And how well do they do with that? Do they take an interest in it? Do they, have you just made it a real big point in all your meetings to talk about it?
Some hated it. Some hated it. Some still hate it. Others embrace it and love it. But it's here to stay, and we just make it clear. And they're learning to create new habits, and they're getting used to this. And it's not that bad. It can be daunting to the technologically challenged amongst us out there. But I think overall, as people see the value in this on our team, there's more and more buy-in as we go along.
Good. And the more consistent you are, and the leaders of the business are, where, okay, this ain't going anywhere, I might as well embrace it. There's also a lot of times that transition where I guess if I want to get paid, I need to do this. And for some people, looking at the hours, obviously we always want to balance speed and quality, move quickly, don't rush. But to have something that we're shooting for, to know the hours, there is zero doubt in my mind that helps us stay closer, if not improve, certainly improve our expected versus actual hours. What gets measured gets improved, and it is for sure. If you're somebody listening to this who is not giving your team in the field the number of estimated hours, if you're not doing that and you have apprehensive of that, at least try it a couple times. But what you'll find is you're going to start doing what Steve's doing, which is really putting it out there and making it clear before, during, and after the job, because that's what's going to help you be more profitable.
It's the blind archery trap. So one of the things I want to do with everybody, if we don't get buy-in soon, is we're going to put blindfolds on everybody out in the field. We're going to give them little bows and arrows, and we're going to put a target out there and try to hit it with the blindfold on. And then we're going to take the blindfold off and see if they can get to the bullseye a little closer. And I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Ooh, a little object lesson for the holdouts.
A little bit.
I like it. Do it, Steve. Take pictures of it too.
Yeah.
And be careful. It sounds like a workers' comp nightmare.
It might be.
Yeah. Anything else in here that you want to show?
No, I think that's really it. I mean, we can get down into the weeds with this stuff, but I think essentially everyone can kind of see how those cost codes come into our estimating and how that all kind of flows. I think that's the most important thing.
Exactly. Excellent. So that show was exactly what I was hoping it was going to be, Steve, where we're able to dig in and talk about the general philosophy and reason behind job costing. Talk a little bit about your past of not taking it seriously, how you've kind of gotten to the point where you are here, and what you just showed us is an excellent best practice. That when you have this dialed in, the data that you have at your fingertips is extremely beneficial, and it helps you be a more profitable remodeler. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a lot of work to get it to the level that you have it, but you're showing that it's certainly possible, and stick with it and get it dialed in. So those are a couple of my takeaways. Steve, if you were to share maybe a final takeaway that you would want to emphasize with the people watching, what would you say?
Well, again, back to what I was saying before, you can't fix a problem that you don't know isn't there, or that you don't see. And so job costing illuminates all of that. And I think that's really the fundamental. You got to be looking. You got to put the target out there. You got to know what you're trying to hit, and then you go back and see how far off you were and how to dial it in so that you can get better as you go along.
Yeah, excellent. Wonderful. I like that. Job costing illuminates the challenges, the issues, the slippage, and the grippage sometimes too. It's not all just, job costing isn't just all bad news, right? There's sometimes where we're seeing it where we've got some winning lines. Steve, thank you so much for your willingness to share. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing and being generous with the cost codes. And everybody, we'll talk to you again next time. Thanks a bunch, Steve.
You're welcome.